Welcome into Flag for Discussion, episode 44 for Monday, November 17th. My name is Fargo Merkazi, here as always with Jace Hatfield. It was almost a chaotic Saturday. If it wasn't, it was a chaotic Saturday, but it was almost an even bigger separation Saturday. Texas A&M almost lost 28 unanswered points. We're going to get into that. Oklahoma beats Alabama. Texas did not show up against Georgia. My stock in Arch Manning is losing cost, even though he didn't play that bad. It was kind of like the whole Texas thing. But we're going to get into all that. Jace, what's going on? Are we heading into the home stretch feeling good?
I think we are feeling good. Got my Lions playing on Sunday Night Football tonight, so repping the Honolulu Blue. That'll be a good game. And then, college football-wise, week 12 already. We have 2 weeks left after this, and then Army-Navy week. And then we get into conference championships, college football playoff conversations, which the SEC didn't do any favors to help the ease of, hey, let's talk about this playoff situation. They did not help out the committee this weekend. So unfortunate job for the committee.
The week after, Greg Sankey had a press conference. The SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey had a press conference saying, I think we can get 8 teams in the playoff. Alabama goes down and loses to Oklahoma, and then Texas loses to Georgia. I said on our preview show that this is going to be the weekend that Oklahoma and Texas are eliminated from the playoff. I'll take a 50% average there. I think Texas is out. They got Texas A&M. Like, crazier things can happen, and they can go out and beat Texas A&M, and all of a sudden you're left standing. Let me ask you this. If Texas beats Texas A&M and Alabama loses to Auburn, where are we in the SEC at that point? That's 10-3 teams. Or 9-3.
Alabama, I think, Alabama has looked impressive enough, and I think beaten enough good teams that I would be comfortable with them getting a nod into the playoff, especially if we had some other teams around the country not if BYU finishes super strong, then that might be a different story. But Texas, I think Texas has got to be done. They looked horrible against Georgia. It wasn't even like they lost a tight game against a good team. They looked bad. They got smoked. That was one of those games where if it was 5 quarters, they lose by 40. If it was 6 quarters, they lose by 80. Like, they just looked so outmatched all game. They looked bad against Florida, and Florida is a bad football team. They lost to them by 8 points. And then early in the year, they didn't look good against Ohio State, and they just had so many middling bad wins against bad teams. They've done nothing that makes me think, oh, you know what? This team does have a playoff run ceiling. I think they've had opportunities to prove that, and they are 0 in opportunities to prove themselves as a high caliber team. I'm ready to move on from them. And I think that Texas A&M looking as bad as they did and as beatable as they did against South Carolina. Now, the comeback was phenomenal, but that first half I've never seen a number 3 undefeated team in the country down 30-3 to what's South Carolina's record, 3-7 or whatever team like that.
They were 1-6 in the SEC heading into that game.
Yeah, that doesn't help either. That does not help. Like, Texas beating them doesn't help their cause. I'm out on Texas if you haven't figured out by now. I'm ready for them to be completely done for.
Well, we'll get into that game towards the end of the show. I think you're right, though. Like, Georgia destroyed them, but at the same time, it was one of those games. That game itself was one of those games. It was 14-10 in the third quarter. Obviously, Texas could have made a play and taken the lead and made it completely changed our narrative about this game. But it was also 14-10, and it was one of those games where you just knew just going to win this. Like, Georgia has a leg up. They're close right now. And then obviously they score a touchdown, onside kick happens, score another one, 21 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. We're going to get into that. Make sure you are subscribed to us on YouTube at Flag for Discussion. Spell it out, Flag for Discussion, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts at Flag for Discussion. We're on Twitter at F4Discussion, TikTok at Flagged4Discussion. That was one of my better ones today. We are peaking at the right time, Jace. Also, side note for everybody, we got a fun game towards the middle of the show. We're going to talk about what does it mean if your team's peaking at the right time. Jace is going to quiz me. We're going to really figure out which teams are setting themselves up for success going into the home stretch and into the playoff. But I want to get down to Tuscaloosa. Number 11, Oklahoma takes down number 4, Alabama, 23-21. Now, in our notes, Jays, I wrote, was this like a Murphy's Law game? Like, anything that can go wrong will go wrong? for Alabama, or was Oklahoma is Oklahoma ascending in a way that we didn't expect them to do at this point? Because Oklahoma, when they lost to Texas, we just wrote them off. Not because they lost to Texas, but because they had such a hard schedule already that we just assumed they would take a couple more losses. That offense, especially after the Mateer injury, has been hit or miss. They've been on fire. They've been very cold. They haven't been the same offense as they were the first 4 or 5 weeks. But that defense really came into play. Ty Simpson had his 5th game in a row with a fumble. They lost a fumble in this game. Alabama lost 2 fumbles. They fumbled 3 times in general. Ty Simpson had an overall pretty good game, 28-42, 326 yards, touchdown, interception, and a fumble loss. But Oklahoma had a pick six. They had 4 sacks, 5 tackles for loss. They played the cliche of complimentary football. Like, they weren't special offensively, but their defense allowed their offense to make plays when it was needed, in my mind. Alabama felt like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. They had a shank punt. They had a fumble loss. They had an interception, a pick six. I mean, sorry, I know I'm rambling. I'm just like going down the game stats. Alabama was better on 3rd down. They had almost 200 more total offensive yards. They had less penalties, and they had a pretty significant time of possession advantage, and they lost this game. What happened in your eyes?
Yeah, that all those stats too, something that won't show up on the box score. Alabama threw another pick in the end zone that got called back from a PI that didn't really impact the play one way or another. So even that happened. I thought it was mainly Alabama losing this football game more than anything. But also I thought Oklahoma was very opportunistic, which is kind of the staple Brent Venables defense. Alabama moved the ball, and that's kind of Oklahoma's fine with that. But you make one mistake, Oklahoma's the kind of team that'll pounce on a football, that'll take advantage of a missed throw. And they did a really good job of doing that, obviously enough to win. Alabama, this is not the Nick Saban Alabama days where we're used to seeing really cleaned up special teams, no mistakes, holding on to the football. They move the ball well under DeBoer and Grubb. That's, they throw the ball well, they throw it downfield, they have good wide receivers, they have a good quarterback. But I thought for the first time this season, Ty Simpson looked a little shaky to me. I've watched him a lot this year, and I still think very highly of him, and I've always given him a lot of praise. But when he was under pressure, he looked pretty shaky. He started to get happy feet back there. He started to misfire a few times. He had a few overthrows over the middle, putting the football in harm's way. Threw a pick six. Probably should have thrown another pick. It was a rough game for him. I thought he looked the most human he has all season, and you have to give credit to Oklahoma. They got to the quarterback really well, and like I said, they took advantage of misfires from Ty Simpson. I do think Alabama, this game's going to hurt because they lost this. I don't think this was, man, Oklahoma's really good. Oklahoma's opportunistic and took advantage when they had opportunities, but Oklahoma didn't move the ball well offensively at all. They had 12 first downs in this game. Like that's Alabama's 23. I didn't think Oklahoma looked special to me. I don't think Oklahoma looked like some big bad wolf. I just thought they took advantage of the handful of mistakes that Alabama made. Alabama wasn't able to recover. So it's a little bit of Murphy's Law on Alabama's end. Every time they made a mistake, they didn't get away with it, which we've seen you watch so many football games where you get away with a mistake but the ball bounces your way or the guy drops a pick for you and you're like, wow, thank you. That didn't happen for Alabama, unfortunately. And then Oklahoma, I don't want to say they got lucky because I thought that, I like the word opportunistic. Every single time an opportunity came up for them to make a play, they did. But I also didn't think offensively, they barely created any opportunities for themselves offensively. Mateer looked okay. The wide receivers looked okay. The O-line looked okay. The run game wasn't great. They didn't move the ball very well. So this game almost was bad for both teams. I thought both teams walked away from this game with me thinking, wow, these are very beatable teams, where I didn't think that coming into this game.
So I'm going to run down a stat for you, or a series of stats for you. And this will kind of explain my thinking as this game was going on. So 2023, Kalen DeBoer at Washington. So they start out the year destroying Boise State and Tulsa. They beat Michigan State. This is before Washington was in the Big Ten, 41-7. They beat Cal. Then they play Arizona, beat them 31-14. They play Oregon 36-33 win. They play a bad Arizona State team 15-7 win. They play a subpar Sanford team 42-33. They got USC with Caleb Williams 52-42 win. Utah 35-28, Oregon State 22-20, Washington State 24-21, Oregon again, 34-31. And then they beat Texas in the Sugar Bowl, lost to Michigan by 20 in the national title game. I don't say all that to say, like, I don't want to recap the Washington 2023 season. I say that to say that was at least 7 or 8 one-score wins. And I think one-score wins are a bit of luck. Like, the most teams that have one, like, the Kansas City Chiefs went like 13-1 or something last season in one-score wins, and that's why, like, their record was so crazy. But now they're losing some of those games. They're falling behind a little bit in the AFC West. I know that's the NFL. But on the other hand, one-score games are also a reflection on how your program health is, coaching wise is. And there's a reason Nebraska had lost like 30 straight one-score games before Matt Rule. And they're still kind of in that spell, but not as much. And what I kind of saw with Alabama this year is they haven't beaten anybody handedly, really. Like, I know the Vanderbilt score looks better, but that was a last couple minute touchdown that didn't need to be scored to add on to the scoreboard. I say all that to say, when this game was happening and Alabama converted on 4th down on that same like end around play that Washington did in the rain against Oregon State in 2023. I was like, okay, DeBoer and Grubb are pulling off their one-score game magic, but it's harder to do that in the SEC. Like, it's flat out, you're going up against a Brent Venables defense, and as much as we've been down on their Oklahoma offense in general, even though they have a good play caller, they have a good quarterback, they have good playmakers, they've just been hot hit or miss. That defense has not been hit or miss. That defense has shown up, and you're somewhat playing with your food. Like you said, once the defense starts affecting Ty Simpson, he got a little happy feet in the pocket. It was a game that Alabama should have won.
Yeah.
Point blank period.
Yeah.
You're at home. You have 200 plus yards. You have a significant time of possession advantage. You're better on 3rd down. You're better everywhere. They missed a field goal too. That's another part of their Murphy's Law for Alabama. That's the game part of it. For me now, it just screws everything up for the SEC playoff race, I think.
Yeah, I feel like you could analyze the difference between Kalen DeBoer and Nick Saban for hours, and it would be a very fascinating conversation. We'll save our viewers that rabbit hole because I know we can go down it multiple times.
I don't want to say Kalen's a bad coach. I'm not saying
No.
Kalen's a bad coach. I'm saying, like you said, it's not the same Alabama where I also would argue if Saban was the coach still, they wouldn't be blowing teams out. It's just a different sport in the SEC. Look at Georgia. I know they destroyed Texas last week. I mean, on Saturday, but they don't have the depth with 5 stars like they used to. Like, it's just a different sport than Alabama had 5 years ago with Saban. So I'm not saying DeBoer's a bad coach, but it's just like that's the life that they're living now. Sorry.
But yeah, no, you're good. The difference between them is, it's not that Kalen's a bad coach. It's that under Saban, if you were going to lose, it was going to be because another team outplayed you. You weren't going to turn it over 3 times. Probably, should have been 4. You weren't going to miss a field goal. You weren't going to shank a punt. Like, Saban was the type of coach that you might play a team that's going to outperform you, but I can guarantee you Saban's teams weren't going to shank punts. They weren't going to miss field goals, and they weren't going to turn it over 3+ times. They were the team that blocks punts, right? They're the team that blocks field goals. They're the team that has, trick play on a special teams play for a 1st down. That was Nick Saban. Kalen DeBoer is much more, you have to live with these tough, frustrating losses where you do these dumb things. Discipline might be the right word. DeBoer teams maybe aren't as disciplined as a Saban team, and Saban teams are so disciplined, so that's true for almost every coach. But for every time DeBoer lets your quarterback throw for 400 yards and your offense is really fun and high flying, you got to deal with one of these games. And like you said, he got away with it in the Pac-12 days. He got away with it playing Oregon State, who was full of 3 stars and below. It's not going to work against an Oklahoma team that's 4 and 5 stars. So this is, I think, unfortunately, the reality and the growth that Kalen's going to have to do next. But yeah, for the SEC standings, to push the envelope a little bit further, Texas A&M, knock on wood, should be in the SEC championship game. They play Texas as their last SEC game. This is where we get into, like, they play Samford, Eastern Illinois for Alabama, like all these bummy schools next, and then they play Texas to end the year. That's going to be a Friday night game, actually, oddly enough. Sounds great on paper. I just don't think Texas has the juice to beat Texas A&M. So then it's going to come down to Georgia, Ole Miss, Alabama. I think Alabama has the control your own destiny aspect. They have the win over Georgia, then they have not played Ole Miss. But Alabama, based on the second tiebreaker, first is head-to-head record. Then you jump into conference opponent record. And Farbo and I did the math for you all. Alabama's got Ole Miss beat there by much more than Ole Miss could ever come back from. They have a lot of similar conference opponents, and then the different ones for Ole Miss was Mississippi State, Kentucky, Arkansas, which Mississippi State is 1-6 in the conference. Kentucky's 2-5. Arkansas is 0-6. Alabama's was Tennessee, who's 3-3, Missouri, who's 3-3, and Vandy, who's 4-2. So Alabama's got that tiebreaker. So Alabama, you beat Georgia or you beat Auburn, and you're good to go. I think Ole Miss needs a Texas A&M and an Alabama losses to try and recoup their way up to the top, and Georgia, I think, needs just Alabama to lose against Auburn. I don't think that's going to happen though. So it looks like Texas A&M and Alabama, but Alabama Auburn's I'm not going to sign off on that game. Same thing with Texas A&M, Texas. They're not done deals, but that's kind of what we're looking at with the SEC race.
Yeah, we're gonna get more into the SEC race. The last thing I have on this game, and it makes me sound like a non-ball knower, so excuse me. I hate it, and it happened in the Iowa USC game. I hate it when you need a big throw and the quarterback takes like a shot at the deep end, at the far sideline, or a shot deep. Like it was 4th and 5 for Iowa, and Mark Gronowski takes a shot towards the end zone. I'm like, dude, I know it's probably like the best play that you saw open, but at the same time, like your offensive coaches should hopefully be setting up a little bit easier of a 5-yard completion for you than you taking a 17-yard pass when Iowa hadn't done that all game. And then same thing with Ty Simpson. Like he got happy feet, so the ball didn't have as much behind it when he let go, but he was throwing it to the far hash and it just didn't get there. And
Yeah,
I
Florida Ole
that
Miss
just
did that too. Lagway,
yeah,
last second,
it just
4th and whatever it was, Lagway chucked a 60-yard deep ball into triple coverage, and it's like you don't have one crossing route that you can try and hit, one curl route
it
that you
just
can try and
grinds my
hit.
gears because like I said, I know it makes me sound like a non-ball knower because I'm not the quarterback, I'm not the play caller. I don't know what the play was, I don't know what it was designed for, and I don't know what the quarterback exactly saw when he was back in the pocket. I understand all that, but there has to be an easier play. That's my entire. There has to be an easier completion for you to make set your quarterback up with. What was easy this week was picks for you, Jace. Let's. Why don't you break down our picks recap and how I am becoming the South Carolina of our picks this season?
Yeah. So we did 5 games this week. Coming into the week, I was 2 games behind you at 41-38. You were at 43-36. I started off red hot. So first game of the day that we had that concluded was Notre Dame at Pitt. Notre Dame 12.5-point favorites. We were both on the Irish. That was easy sailing for Notre Dame from the get-go. They smooth sailing. They look really good. Jeremiah Love, if you have not seen like that, I think it was one of the first or second touchdown of that game. They scored quickly. He had an unbelievable long touchdown run. Quick cut, smoked through the hole, and then out of the hole had a cut to his left, followed by a plant and a spin to his right. 2 defenders fall. He breaks free. And then at that point, there's still a safety that has an angle on him and just pure burst, just 1 foot in the ground out of the spin, accelerates through. That kid is unbelievable. And it was one of the better runs I had seen all season. And it's unfortunate for him because I think the highlights I've seen on Twitter, that Noah Whittington run from Friday night for Oregon, where he broke like 400. He did the Marshawn Lynch basically.
Yeah.
So that's going to get all the clips, which was a great highlight. So I think that Jeremiah Love clip is going to get buried because of that, but give it a watch. Sorry, not to ramble on that game, but Notre Dame cover for both of us. Game number 2 was number 19, Virginia at Duke. Duke was 5.5-point favorites. This was if Duke goes 9-4, what happens? Virginia closed the door on that conversation. They win,
Thank
so
God.
they cover. I was on Virginia. Yeah, we don't want to deal with that. Farbode, you were on Duke. Setting you up for 1-1, me for 2-0. Game number 3 was number 21 Iowa at USC in the rain. I don't know how Iowa brought the rain to LA, but they did. USC 6.5-point favorites. I was on Iowa. You were on USC. It was incredibly close. I believe it was a 5-point game. Iowa covers, making me 3-0 at this point. Farbode 1-2. So that was the official. Farbode and I texted him and I said, "Don't look now, but 3-0, 1-3 or 1-2." And
Yeah.
you had said we're actually officially tied at that point in time for the first time since week 0. So the comeback had not been complete, but it had been at least vaunted, which was nice. And then unfortunately, the SEC afternoon slate didn't do me any favors. We had number 4 Oklahoma at Alabama. We were both on the Crimson Tide -6. As we all know, Oklahoma came out on top, so cover and the win for them. We both dropped that one. And then Texas at Georgia. Georgia 6-point favorites. You were on Georgia. Smooth sailing for you. I was on Texas, making me go 3-2 on the week. Farbode, you went 2-3. I'm now 1 game back at 44-40. You sit a game ahead at 45-39. We both have the tie, but I'm just not saying it because we're both in the same spot there. So a good comeback in the week for you after starting off 1-3. You navigated your way to 2-3, which was big because that Georgia Texas game swung a lot for us in this final slate.
Yeah. And then shot in the bark. Jace, you and I are red hot. Thank God Northwestern didn't win, by the way, because then I would have no shot in the bark. But honestly, yeah, in terms of it would have been the dagger. In terms of what we have been the most right on this year, it's shot in the bark. Shot in the bark. I'm sitting at 11 points. I had South Carolina plus 19.5. I could have had the outright win if South Carolina, could hold on to a 30-3 lead, but lo and behold, that's too hard. They lost the game, so I got the 1 point, but I could have had 3. And then we would have been tied if South Carolina did that. And then Jace had Northwestern plus 11.5 at not at Michigan versus Michigan in Wrigley. They should have won that game. You could have had 3 points from that, but you're sitting at 13 points. I'm sitting at 11. Hey, this is neck or neck in the last 2 weeks. And then the thing that we couldn't be more wrong about was our flag for discussion parlay.
Oh.
We went 0 for 4 legs this week. I'm just going to move on from that. I have breaking news, though, Jace. College game day is heading to Eugene, Oregon for the USC Oregon matchup next Saturday. So obviously we'll be here to preview. I almost said preview that game for this week, but we gotta move into just as fun game, maybe even more of a fun game. Brand new game. It's called Bucket or Chuck It. Jace, I'm going to pass it over to you. You're the host.
All right. So this game is what we're going to do is there's 3 buckets, and each week every time we do this, the titles of the buckets will change. And then I'm going to give you 6 teams, but I'm going to do them one by one and one at a time. I'm going to give you a team and you're going to put them in one of the 3 buckets. And at the end of it, each bucket can only have 2 teams in it. All right. So you're going to have to think about where you're placing these teams and how you're leaving spots open. And we'll review your work at the end. We'll see what we agree with, what we wish we had done differently. I've got 6 teams hidden that you do not know. And this is not just for the show. Farbode truly does not know these 6 teams.
Yeah.
Ash, go ahead.
Am I making my picks team by team, or once we get through the 6th team, then I throw them in? I think I should go team by team and then make adjustments after.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So we'll go team by team, no adjustments, and then at the end we'll talk about the adjustments. So every time I give you a team, you got to place them before we move on.
Sure, let's do it. So go through the buckets and let's do this thing.
All right. So the 3 buckets here. This is going to be revolved around teams if they're peaking at the right times. Bucket number 1. This is a team that's peaking at the right time. They're starting to peak now. You feel it. You see it. You're like, yeah, I like the direction they're headed coming into the postseason. Bucket number 2, it's either a team that is like yet to peak, you haven't really seen that peak for them, or we'll also call it steady, because I think some teams have just been steadily really good. Ohio State, Indiana, those kind of teams. So we'll call it bucket 2 is yet to peak, or they're steady and you're comfortable. And then bucket 3 is you think they peaked too early. They might have looked really good at some points earlier in the season. You don't like the football they're playing now, and you're nervous about their postseason abilities.
All righty.
All right. Ready for team 1?
Let's do it.
Team 1 is going to be the Georgia Bulldogs.
That's an easy bucket 1 for me. They're peaking at the right time. I think the knock on them for most of the year, it sounds silly saying knock for a team that good, is that they've just been playing with their food, and now you're they've won the games. They lost to a really good Alabama team at home, but since then they've been taking care of business, escaped a close loss with against Florida, and they've been doing really good. I think last night kind of shows like their run game, Gunnar Stockton, that defense, they're starting to peak. And Texas, we already broke it. We're going to break it down later. They're not an elite team, but they're a good team, and Georgia made them look like a bad team.
Yeah, I agree. I think Georgia, that they looked really good in Starkville 2 weeks ago. Looked amazing last night, and and Kirby Smart too. He's got his team playing good ball. It's like Kirby Smart would be a great baseball manager. Actually, get his team to peak right before the playoffs. All right, team number 2, we have the Indiana Hoosiers.
All right. Wonder they have a discussion for peak too early because the last couple of weeks they haven't really performed up to snuff. But the last couple of weeks they've been missing a lot of what's made them really special. I would put them in steady. They feel like
Okay.
the Oregon of last year. They haven't gotten
Mm-hmm.
they've taken care of business and they've beaten everybody wire to wire. If they go on to win the Big Ten title game, they are the Oregon of last year.
They do feel like that. Oregon beat Ohio State early in the season last year, and then coasted comfortably. Indiana kind of seems to be doing that too. Maybe they'll
Senior
learn.
quarterback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll learn from the Oregon recipe. I hope they do for their sake, but it was a tough spot. All right, team number 3. So you've got Georgia in peaking at the right time. You have Indiana in steady, and then bucket 3 is still open. Team number 3, we have Ohio State.
I don't think they've peaked yet. So I think peak too early is wrong. Yet to peak is probably the spot, but I'm just worried putting a second team in bucket 2 already. But I think that's just the state of Ohio State and Indiana. Their offense is, I think, at 7.5 clip, and they're about to get to 9.2 or whatever. Like, I think they're building their team up to kind of have a similar run as they did in the playoff last year, where they're just unstoppable. And that defense, unbelievable.
Yeah, their defense is great, and they're yet to peak in a scary way. In that, like, I feel like it's going to happen soon. And as someone whose team might have to play Ohio State in a playoff, you don't want that. You do not like to stare at
I have
that
a
one.
question for you. Before you revealed team number 4, did you pick teams where I will unfortunately have to throw like a really good team into peak too early? Am I gonna have to throw Indiana in peak too early? And we'll find out. Let's get to team 4.
Yeah, I set it up so you have, like, I made it so there's 2 teams that kind of fit each category in my head, or at least like that you could make arguments for teams being either way. So you have chances to be alive here. All right, team
Let's do
number
it.
4, the Alabama Crimson Tide, coming off of a loss.
Well, if they peaked too early, then they shouldn't have lost to Florida State, but they beat Georgia early. I'm gonna say peak too early. It's not even that they lost yesterday. I think they've looked shaky, and they haven't been the dominant Bama. One thing we know about Kalen DeBoer's Alabama is they're gonna show up against Georgia. They're gonna show up against the best teams in the country. Not that Oklahoma's not one of the best teams in the country. You expected them to show up yesterday. They're at home. They want to avenge the loss at Oklahoma that they had last year, where Jalen Miller played terrible. I thought there was a reason we both picked Alabama to cover the 6 points in that game. We thought that was going to be Kalen DeBoer just putting his foot down, saying, "Hey, last year was last year. This is a different Bama team." But
I agree. I think that's it's a good spot for them. I think I'm with you. They had that South Carolina scare a couple weeks ago. They had the LSU game. They ended up winning by 11 points, but it wasn't a pretty performance. And it also was one of those games where they scored late to take a bigger lead than it actually was in that game. And then that Oklahoma loss was unfortunate. And I don't think Eastern Illinois is a good tune-up game. Yeah, they'll probably kill them and they'll look good, but it's also not like, that's one of those games where you don't learn a lot about your team playing that game. That's more of a, let's just get healthy that week more than it is anything else. All right, so you've got Georgia at bucket number 1 peaking at the right time. Second spot still open. Your bucket number 2 yet to peak steady. That is full with Indiana and Ohio State, your 2 Big Ten teams at the top. And then your bucket number 3 peak too early. You've got Alabama with that spot to go. All right, 2 teams left. Team number 5 is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
They are peaking at the right time. I don't think it's any more debate. I think they go up against A&M and Miami, and you and I would have a serious conversation about if those games end up any differently. A&M is a great team. Miami is a pretty good team. They peak too early, I think. But Notre Dame looks unbelievable right now, and I think you and I, we didn't expect them to look this good, but we expected them to be really, really good going into the end of the year, because we said, all right, this is the first year starting quarterback. Their defense is replacing a lot from last year, but they have the run game to still fall back on with Jeremiah Love. We're going to build them up and see how as our quarterback develops in season, how good we can get. And they have exceeded all expectations in my mind.
Yeah, I agree. They're playing their best football right now. And because they're a team that can dominate in the trenches with really good running backs, those are the teams you do not want to see peak at the right time, because those are teams that can beat you in any way, shape, or form. Like, you look at Ohio State last year when they needed the ground game in the playoffs a few times to put games away, they did it with ease. When they needed the ground game to steady Will Howard in the receiving game, they did it with ease. And then once they get CJ Carr going, once last year they got Will Howard going, then it becomes virtually impossible to stop. And that's kind of what Notre Dame looks like they're doing right now. All right.
Team
So
6, I got
your
one
only
spot
spot left, yeah, is peaked too early. This is kind of funny. I was curious if this would happen. The team that's going to be joining Alabama in the peak too early, Team 6, is the Oklahoma Sooners. I'm curious if you
That's
give me your thoughts
exactly
here.
what
What
they are.
bucket? Yeah, I think even though they beat Alabama, and I think because on paper they beat Bama and Tennessee the last 2 weeks, people are going to say, no, dude, they're playing their best ball. They didn't look great against Alabama. I'll be honest. Their offense was sluggish and slow. It was actually terrible. I'll just call it what it is. It was a bad offense. I don't want to say they got lucky. They were opportunistic. Yeah, they can't run the ball, and Mateer hasn't looked the same since he's gotten hurt. Tennessee, even last week, the defense gave up 27 to them. And then early in the season, that was when they beat Michigan, they killed Temple, they beat Auburn, they killed Kent State, and people were talking about them as a potential John Mateer Heisman, as a potential top 5 team in the country, potential SEC champs. And since then, they've kind of middled their way through this John Mateer injury stretch. So I don't hate them in that spot, honestly, despite the beating Alabama on the road. I don't hate that
I'll
spot.
tell you what. So beating Alabama on the road, regardless of anything, is an incredible achievement, accomplishment, and you can't do
Yep.
that without being a dangerous, scary team that's a playoff bound. Probably they beat a good, not great Tennessee team by less than a score. They lost to Ole Miss. They destroyed a bad South Carolina team. They got beat pretty badly by Texas. It's just one of those things where, like, I don't want to say Oklahoma didn't win that game, Alabama lost it, but I think that's kind of like the general consensus of Alabama kind of played with their food, made a couple of mistakes. Oklahoma took the opportunities to win the game, but I don't think that makes, if they were playing again tomorrow, I would still take Alabama -6, is how I would put it. I think Oklahoma is a good team. I just don't know what I'll get from them week by week. They if they kept their first 4 weeks performance, first 5 week performance up every week, and they still lost the same amount of games, but they just looked better, I would at least be a lot more confident in them. But they looked really good. John Mateer, you said it. John Mateer was a Heisman favorite. And now he's nowhere near that conversation. That's the definition of peak too early. I actually
I
like.
agree with you.
Go ahead.
Go for it. I want to hear your recap of your 3 buckets here in teams. I updated our doc too, so if you want to see it in one full
Yeah.
vision, go for it.
I like where I have teams. Bucket 1 with Georgia, Notre Dame, they're peaking at the right time. I think that's absolutely right. Notre Dame lost 2 games early in the season by a combined 4 points, and now they look like world beaters. And I think like I said, you put them up against Miami and Texas A&M, the games they lost, and I think they at least walk out of there with 1-1, if not 2-0. Georgia, it's not even the performance they had yesterday. This is Kirby Smart pulling off Kirby Smart. I got to be honest with you. I know you have, and like you've been a little bit more than me, and in general, a lot of people have. I was not a Gunnar Stockton believer going into the year, and I was definitely not, and still not, a Mike Boba, their coordinator, believer. What they've done with Gunnar Stockton is outstanding, and it's showing at this point. It's the same thing, peaking at the right time. Gunnar Stockton, CJ Carr. And then my yet to peak I like too. I think it's unfair because Indiana, Ohio State deserve to be in the peaking at the right time mode because they have been like world beaters. They have been unbelievable all season. It's just I think when you're wire to wire like that, it's hard to I don't even know how to even put it. Like it's not that they haven't even played anybody. They have played people. It's just they haven't had to have that extra gear in many games this year, so we haven't seen them look special. They've looked really good, though, and like teams you don't want to play. And peak too early. Alabama, I still think they can win a national title, but I think they peaked too early. And Oklahoma, like I said, I don't know what I'll get from them. I have a question for you before you respond to that. This is fascinating. because of the way our teams are set up in this. What if the buckets like no-go zone in terms of teams you don't want to play in the playoff, nail biter, and I don't know, chalk, easy win. I feel like that would like Notre Dame would be my no-go zone. Ohio State would be in my no-go zone. That sounds really weird to say, by the way. And then Georgia, Indiana would probably be nail biters, and then Georgia, Indiana, Alabama would be nail biters, and then Oklahoma would probably be chalk in my mind.
Yeah, right now I don't of teams on this list. I don't want to play Notre Dame. I think they are playing elite football right now, and I really believe in Marcus Freeman. I really believe in their offensive line, their running backs. I think CJ Carr is the real deal. I also don't want to play Ohio State. Ohio State's Ohio State. They have an insanely talented roster. They have great coaching staff. I I think part of them being in the yet to peak bucket is they just haven't had a chance to like prove themselves. They haven't had to either. They've just killed teams, and that's always scary. And they have what I still think is the two best players in college football, in Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs. Carnell Tate, it sounds like, might have a serious injury, which is really unfortunate to hear. But regardless, this is Ohio State. I think Georgia is close to being on that same tier just with how good they looked against Texas. But then I have to remind myself it's Texas. Steve Sarkisian, is up there. So
I see what you
I'll
did.
put Georgia in the no-go zone, but I don't. Maybe there's like a tier below that. Indiana, I still think is a really good football team, but I still I still don't. They don't scare me as much as Ohio State or Notre Dame do right now. I think Indiana is a really well coached team, but I think they're a little bit more beatable than I think for Indiana. It usually takes their best performance to beat elite teams, where I think Ohio State and Notre Dame don't need to play their A+ ball to beat you, which is probably what scares me. And then Alabama, Oklahoma, I do think are chalk. I like my chances against both those teams. I think both of them have enough flaws and ways to beat them that, like, I think they're comfortably beatable in the grand scheme of things if you're a top team.
I think Alabama has it in them.
I would add, like,
First
if we
round
expand it, Texas
go.
Tech.
Yeah, no go.
Okay, Texas Tech
You got
would
me?
be my
Yeah.
team that's not in here that I think is a no-go zone with how good of football they're playing right now. So that's a team I would be terrified to play, but they're not in the 6 team. So
No, I think that's the curious part. I think Texas Tech, amongst the most dominant teams in the country, they have proven it. They played a bad UCF team who was missing a lot injury-wise already, so they were going to kill them, but they took care of business. Yeah, that Alabama, I feel like they can go into the first round of the playoff, and they can beat a team 44-13. But then they can also lose to a team worse than them. So that's the problem with Bama is at their best, they belong in the no-go. But at their worst, I don't know. Let's get to cleanup crew. Are you down?
I'm very down. The first one's going to be a sour conversation for you. Should have been your 3-pointer, but I'll let you take it away from there.
Number 3, Texas A&M scores 28 unanswered points, comes back and beats South Carolina 31-30. I obviously had South Carolina plus 19.5 as my shot in the bar. I got the 1.4. I should have gotten the outright cover with Shane Beamer. At halftime, he left the tunnel to go into the locker room, and he was pumping up the fans, all excited. Just forgot that he had to hold on to the lead. I mean, Marcel Reed looked lost at the beginning of this game, but he found it. He finished the game 439 yards, 11.3 yards per pass, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Marcel Reed didn't do much on the ground. I mean, A&M didn't do much on the ground. South Carolina, Lenore Sellers wasn't great through the air. 246 yards, but 50% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, a pick. They ran the ball really well. They almost got into a fight with the security guard, if you saw that. And that game, we texted each other during the game, and we both said, maybe we should take the people who said A&M hasn't played anybody seriously. Like, is this a performance? I know A&M came back, scored 28 unanswered to win. But is that a performance that sours you on them a little bit? Like, do they deserve to drop in the rankings?
I don't, just because they're there's 3 undefeateds and they were already third of the 3. I think they just solidified that they are the lower end of those 3 undefeated teams. But I don't think any one-loss team or more should jump them. I think they're still going to be at 3. Tale of two halves. The second half, incredibly impressive offensively and defensively. They looked elite. I think this was just one of those games where I think we all knew the ceiling of Texas A&M, and we really did see that in the second half. But they showed a floor that I didn't know they had, right? I thought their floor
No,
was much
yeah,
higher than it was. And I mean, you saw how much they got just gashed in every way, shape, and form in the first half. And it didn't even take like an insane performance out of South Carolina. It was a pretty average performance out of their offense. It was just, you saw Marcel Reed's weakness of you get pressure on him and he tries to make hero ball plays, he turns it over or misfires, and South Carolina was opportunistic on it. You saw the inability to run the football and how that affects that offense. When you stop their run and you put them third and long, you know it's going to one of two guys. And I thought South Carolina did a good job. They gave a blueprint out there on how to slow down Texas A&M. Unfortunately, they just didn't follow it in the second half. So I think South Texas A&M has the ceiling we all thought that they had, and it's been impressive. But their floor was certainly exposed, I think, in this game. And as an undefeated team, you get nervous to have a floor like that, especially when you're not battle tested. A lot of people are going to give them a lot of credit from the Notre Dame game. They deserve that. That Notre Dame team that they played week 2 was worlds different than Notre Dame team playing today. And yes, it's still a great win. Yes, I'm still going to give them credit for that win, a lot of credit for that win. But it's a lot different than beating today's Notre Dame. And I do think after watching this game, if they played again tomorrow, I would take Notre Dame pretty comfortably to win that football game. So I don't know. Their floor.
that line would probably be like 2.5. No,
I would love to see that
A&M.
hypothetical line. I would
Yeah.
think so. Yeah.
I wonder. I don't even know. Yeah, maybe we have to get a partnership with the sports book and ask them for the hypothetical line. Hey, I agree with you. I don't think it's enough to drop. I think it just showed college football. I think in college football in general, you're allowed to have stinker games. Yeah, if
That's a
you're a
good
really
point.
good team,
I'm being harsh.
especially in this day and age. I just don't think you're allowed to have 30-3 stinker games. And the only thing that saves them is they finish the game 28-0 in the game. Imagine if they lost 31. What would we be saying differently about A&M right now? And I think that's one of the reasons you and I started our podcast is like it's so frustrating. It's like the difference of 1 point or 2 points is the difference between you saying one team's a world beater and one team is and I don't think A&M is a fraud. I think you're allowed to have a stinker every game, but they finished the game with 503 total yards. They finished the game with a ton of passing yards. They struggled running the ball. They had 2 less penalties. They average time of possession was even around the game. I say all that to say is like they have that gear in them. They just didn't show up. And we have to say this was also on the same day that Mike Elko signed his 6-year contract extension. I think if they lost like 37-14, it would have looked awful. But it also shows you how dangerous A&M can be at any point. If they don't have it, you know they have a gear that they can tap into. And
Yeah.
the unfortunate part for A&M fans, or the thing that might make you nervous, is, all right, we can tap into that gear against South Carolina. But can we tap into that gear against Texas Tech in this first round of the playoff, second round of the playoff? I'm not sure, you know?
Yeah.
Like you can tap into those gears, but like at what point can we stop? Can this be too much to overcome? Because 30-3 is, I mean, ridiculous to overcome in general.
Yeah, and it wasn't like it was 30-3 to Alabama because they were red hot, right? It was South Carolina. Now, maybe the saving grace is it was mostly due to Texas A&M's turnovers and their own miscues is what led to that. But you also, as a top team in the country with national title hopes, you don't want to see your offense be so loosey-goosey, willy-nilly with the football, turning it over, carefree. Because like you said, it's okay against the 3-7 South Carolina Gamecocks. It's not going to be okay against Texas Tech. It's not going to be okay against Notre Dame. You turn over 4 times to Texas Tech, I promise you they're going to make you pay a little bit harsher than South Carolina did. I'll give Texas Tech, or I'll give Texas A&M some silver lining here about a game like this. It's better to have the stinker in a first half of a game where you're kind of already comfortably in the SEC championship. It's a regular season game. I think you learn a lot in moments like that and in halves like that. And I can tell you this, as an Oregon fan, there's no worse time to have your worst half of football than the Rose Bowl in the college football playoff. if you're going to have your stinker of a half, do it now, not later. You learn a lot about
Yes.
your team. You learn a lot about your floor, what makes you work and what doesn't. I thought they made great second half adjustments in this game. Mike Elko's a good coach. They'll learn from this. I think they'll be all right. I don't think it's an end of the world. I think it is a floor definer, but I don't think it's a Texas A&M stinks. We're out on them. I still think they're a good football team that can grow from this.
So A&M beats a gritty South Carolina team. Let's get into USC coming back to beat a tough Iowa. I'm just saying all these stupid adjectives because that's what the media likes to use. USC comes back, beats Iowa 26-21. They were down 14-0 early on into the game, and it was bully ball from Iowa. It was, honestly, I thought Iowa was trolling USC. They were throwing the ball more than they were running the ball in the first couple drives. From our Twitter account, from our text, it was more like, oh, USC's got no shot because Iowa's controlling the clock. They are running the ball really well. They finished the game with over 180 yards on the ground. They kept USC to 106 yards rushing, 3.4 yards per rush. So they did what they needed to do in terms of recover from how poorly they played against the run against Oregon. But USC made plays, and I think the biggest part of the game for USC winning was kind of what we said last week of like USC can make those, like Oregon can make those passes, USC can make those passes, and they eventually started making plays. The biggest part was USC's defense, which we don't highlight a lot, bowed up. And they showed up and bowed up, and they stopped Iowa from, and not that Iowa's a high-flying offense. I'm not saying that. But Iowa, if you just let them gain 3 yards of carry, 3 yards of carry, 4 yards of carry, they're going to all of a sudden end the third quarter without you ever getting the ball.
Yeah.
Once USC started forcing 3-and-outs or quick possessions by Iowa, USC was able to flip the script, get Iowa's defense on the field in the rain a lot, tire Iowa's defense out. And look, Iowa finished with 6 penalties for 70 yards. That's the difference in the game. There were multiple third downs that Jaden Maiava kind of threw the ball to Makai Lemon, or he just kind of threw the ball up. And if the receivers didn't catch the ball, a lot of times Jacoby Lane, and it turned into like a pass interference. It turned into they got the PI call on Iowa. Some of them were bad, some of them were not. But in general, Iowa's defense was on the field so much in that second half. They were tired. It was raining, and USC made the plays. That's how I saw it.
Yeah, I saw it. I think USC showed a lot more physicality than we're used to seeing out of them.
Yeah.
I also think what makes USC dangerous is like what you said. They have Makai Lemon, Jacoby Lane, two of the better receivers in the country. Makai Lemon has an argument to be the best. And you have Jaden Maiava, who's a great quarterback. When they need to make a big play, and I think I texted you this too, like before the game, we were talking about who we thought was going to win, what's going to happen. And I made the comment of one team has Makai Lemon and the other one doesn't. He had 11 targets for 10 receptions, 153 yards and a touchdown. He drew multiple pass interference calls. He was phenomenal. That's like a scary, teams like that are so hard to put away because you feel like you've won the down. You get him to 3rd and 10 and you get him to throw a jump ball under pressure into double coverage. And it's like, there's a 30% chance Makai Lemon catches it. There's I'll even get 50% chance he catches it. 30% chance you get a PI call, so the odds of them converting things like that is high because they have a player like that. And unfortunately for Iowa, that came back to bite them. I also want to say this because I'm so sick of the narrative of can these West Coast teams play Big Ten football? I think the better question is, can these Big Ten teams play real football?
Because West Coast football.
Yeah, I don't even want to call it West Coast. I want to call it real football because West Coast football used to be the term that is now what is played mostly everywhere in the country, NFL and collegiately. Ever since these West Coast teams have joined the Big Ten, other than UCLA and Washington, who have been kind of down, teams like Iowa, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Purdue, Northwestern, these vaunted upset-minded teams, these teams who are so known to be like tough places to play, physical. Oregon's been dominating since joining, and USC is now kind of turning that page as well, where they're starting to beat these teams too. I want to shut down the narrative because every time College Game Day talks about Oregon or USC or these West Coast teams, it's can they play Big Ten physical football? Can they play that brand? And the answer is always yes, that they can because they're winning these games. And B, I think the the script needs to be flipped. It's not Iowa hasn't lost both to Oregon and USC in rain games, which should favor Iowa. One of them in Kinnick. The question isn't can USC Oregon play Big Ten football? The answer is yes. Oregon went undefeated last year and won the conference. USC is sitting atop the conference this year. It's can these teams step up and play these? I'll give it to you, the West Coast style football. Good quarterbacks, right? Athletic,
That's the
mobile
biggest part
quarterbacks
for
with
me.
big arms, big play wide receivers, running backs that are quick. And so far, the answer is no. A lot of these middling Big Ten teams that used to be competitive in the conference are no longer competitive because I don't think that they can hang in there. And again, I'm talking about these middling ones that I called out. I'm not talking about Michigan. I'm not talking about Ohio
Ohio
State or
State,
Indiana.
Indiana,
They are
Penn
for
State.
sure. It's these middling ones, yeah, that are really struggling to keep up with these teams.
I agree with you. I think on Big Noon Kickoff on Saturday, there was a question. Colin Coward joined the show, but there was a question for him saying like, "What do you see the difference between the Big Ten and the SEC now versus like 5 years ago, or whatever the question was?" And he said a lot of people made the narrative that the Big Ten taking these West Coast teams wouldn't be able to hang because the Big Ten physicality. Well, I'll give you what the Big Ten physicality is real, but the West Coast knows about skill players and quarterbacks. And I think it's been a good marriage for like a couple of years now because all of a sudden you're starting to see really good quarterbacks all over the Big Ten. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that was the case 3 years ago. It was Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. They had really good quarterbacks. Who was Indiana's quarterback 4 years ago? Who was Northwestern's quarterback 4 years ago? Like I know Preston Stone's not elite, but like still a step up over what they've had. Um,
Yeah.
Wisconsin under the Paul Chryst days, we don't know what their quarterbacks were, but they were just run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. So I completely agree with you. I'm gonna skip a couple games. Let's get into. We already talked Georgia, Texas. Let's talk Ole Miss beating a gritty Florida team, 34-24. Ole Miss wins the Lane Kiffin Bowl. I don't think anyone's really interested in the game. I think people are interested in what Lane's going to do. I want to just ask you, do you have any thoughts on what he should do? Like, you're not like if you were his
Yeah,
advisor.
I have thoughts on that and what I think he's going to do. So if I were his advisor, I would tell him that my answer is the same for what I would do if I were him, what I think he should do, and what I think he's going to do. I think he's going to milk this thing out and give no real indication on where he's going to go, what he's going to do. I think he's just going to kind of like, with a snarky smile on his face, say, "Oh, I'm staying," or like make side comments where it's like I think he's going to intentionally be kind of snarky and reserved and passive aggressive. Maybe that's not the right word, but like hint at different things, but he's actually kind of lying or joking. He's not really being serious to murky the waters about what Lane Kiffin's going to do. Because I think as long as with all the job openings that are happening, his name and the dollar amount attached to his contract is just growing and growing each and every week. Also, I don't think Ole Miss is a bad gig. Like, it's not like he's sitting in a bad spot or it's not like he's James
He's
Franklin at
happy.
Penn State where it's like, all right, he's gonna be gone. So I think he's just going to bide his time. Let's, focus on trying to win a conference title if he can, make the playoff, win some playoff games, maybe win a national championship. And this whole time, just keep raising that dollar amount. Keep teams on their toes. Make Florida get desperate. Make LSU get desperate. Make these schools that want you, make them desperate for you. When the season comes to an end, you need to, because it sounds like Ole Miss has put on you're either going to coach our football team, in which case you'll coach us in the playoffs and for the future, or you're done before the playoffs start and you can get out of here.
Yes.
If I were him, I would wait until like the second, the postseason starts, which would be, I think, the Army Navy week. That's the week where they're going to be done. When that week happens, if I'm Lane Kiffin, that's when I give the call to LSU, to Florida, and say, all right, what's your final deal? And then you make your decision from there. I think he's going to take the Florida job. I think he knows it's going to be Florida, but I think he knows that if he takes it now or he makes it known, he's screwed. Not screwed, but like the dollar amount's lower, that kind of thing. So I think he's going to wait until last second, until Florida's as desperate as possible, and then he's going to end up in Gainesville. That's my prediction and what I would do if I were him.
My gut tells me he's going to stay at Ole Miss, but what I
Okay.
think my gut for a long time has told me he's going to stay at Ole Miss because the conversation and so many talking heads have talked about it is it legacy or ceiling for you? Because if it's ceiling and you have to win a national title or compete for that annually, then there's no question you're going to go to Florida. Oh, I just checked. Ole Miss is number 20 in recruiting, because Lane does prioritize the portal a lot, but they're number 20 in high school recruiting. Florida fired their coach 5 weeks ago. They're number 13. They haven't had that many decommits. They have a huge infrastructure within their program of like really good people, recruiting people, personnel, nutrition, like everything for the next coach to come in and be able to elevate the program even more. They just had a bad coach. I say all that to say, if the decision for Lane Kiffin is about ceiling, then it's Florida. If the decision is, hey, in 25 years, this is going to be Lane Kiffin Field, because yeah, you might not have won a national title at Ole Miss, but look at how much you've elevated us. And he's in a place in Oxford that like he seems happy. And like there was I'm sorry, I'm forgetting who wrote it, but there was an article that came out on game day of how happy Lane Kiffin is there. So for me, I'm not going to pretend like I can get into Lane Kiffin's mind. You're right. He's probably going to milk it because his agent's going to tell him the longer you milk it, the more money you're going to get out of this, no matter what you decide to do. Reporting from Florida beat writers, from LSU beat writers, from Arkansas beat writers, from Ole Miss beat writers has basically, they hinted at something coming out today. And then this morning, today's Sunday, the day before the episode is released. And today they came out saying, oh, probably not anything coming out today. So it sounds like there are some conversations between Florida and his camp. If he reciprocates and is interested in that and he has a ceiling conversation, I think it's a wrap. I think he's the head coach of Florida. John Summerall or Alex Golish is going to be at Ole Miss next year. I do just see a very real possibility of Lane Kiffin saying, no, I'm finally in a spot where like I don't feel the need to jump. And and maybe he's like, if I were to jump, it's for an NFL job, because there's definitely
I
a
could
part of
see
him that
him.
wants to like that wants to make right on his Raiders days.
Yeah, I could see him too. If he feels that DeBoer's time at Alabama is ticking and it's coming to an end, I could see a world where he just stays at Ole Miss until the Alabama job opens. If depending
Yes.
on how Alabama finishes this year and what the word is there, I could also see part of his stalling be, well, if like with his agent say, hey, get what intel you can on the Bama job, because my guess is if it's not an NFL gig for him, like Bama would be his pinnacle job. And that could potentially be open. Whether it should or not is a whole nother discussion, but it could potentially be open here shortly. And that would be the job, I think. I think Florida would be another stepping stone to buy. It would be an upgrade from Ole Miss in terms of resources and recruiting and ability to win a championship. But I think it's not. I think Alabama or an NFL gig would still be uh, his final destination, in which case Florida's not that. So maybe he just waits at Ole Miss for it. But that'll be an interesting thing to follow for sure.
Just by the way, because of our podcast luck, he's going to announce something the second we finish recording. So we can go for the next 4 hours or we can go for the next 4 minutes, and something's going to break right after we finish recording. Make sure you're staying tuned with us on socials: Twitter at F4 Discussion, TikTok at Flag, the number 4 Discussion, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast, spell it out at Flag for Discussion. We're going to react to all of this. There's, as much as people say the season's ending, it's really just beginning. We got the last couple of weeks, we got rivalry week, we got Thanksgiving, like we got so much football left. We got the playoffs, we got championship games, we got the coaching carousel. That I think, Jace, honestly, in beginning of December, we might have to do 3 podcasts in 1 week at the beginning, because there's going to be so much coaching rumors and so many like, and then there's the signing days coming up.
Yep.
Early National Signing Day. Like, there's so much that's about to happen. Make sure you're staying tuned with all of us. Also, just so everyone knows, I'm only making the gritty jokes because that's what the media likes to talk about, all the games. And then Oregon beat a bad Minnesota team, right? 6-4. But that's pretty much all I got. Jace, you got anything else?
No, it was a great show and a great week of college football. I'm excited to see we're starting to get a clear picture of all. Here's the last note I'll say. Actually, I don't know why I said no. Right now, this is the most clear all of the conference championship games have looked in quite some time. It feels like all these teams have easy, straightforward paths to close it out. We know college football. We know that never happens. So I expect a chaotic rivalry week coming up in 2 weekends here, because there's no way it's this simple and this easy. So get geared up for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be nuts. As whenever you think something's chalk, it's going to blow up in your face. So as Jay said, gear up for it. Make sure you're following us. Make sure you're staying tuned with us. Thank you so much for listening and being with us. For myself, Farbad Markazi, my lovely partner, Jace Hatfield. Thanks for tuning in. This has been Flagged for Discussion.